questions, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, two. Then I want to get to the discussion of what the board's going to do. But, good. I'll entertain a couple more questions before we get going. But it's getting late in the evening, and it's 10 o'clock. We still have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Driscoll, 6 Equestrian Drive. Just a couple of things. Listening to all the department heads, I mean, it's clear that the services that are provided in this town are excellent. Listening to Chief Nolan, and knowing a lot of the guys on the police force, we have an excellent police department, an outstanding police department. And I think, I'm not as articulate as Deanna, but all we're looking for in the schools is an adequate school system, not excellent. We're not even asking for excellent. We're just looking for adequacy. That's all we want. We are below per pupil spending than the town of Randolph, South Bay today, during receivership. We're about $1,500 less per pupil than Randolph. We're $20-something less than the state average per pupil. The bottom line is we're not funding education adequately. And it's as simple as that. And, Deanna talked about being direct. And I know a lot of you've heard this before. We have half days on Wednesdays. We have kids that have 3 study halls. We're in school at the bare minimum amount of hours that the state says that we need to be in school. Our MCAS scores have been declining for about 3 or 4 years, maybe even more. I remember a town meeting, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and I think there was an override question on the ballot at that meeting. The gentleman stood up and said, "We've done a great job. We don't need more money in the school system because we've done such a great job. Our teachers are so good. We don't need any more money. Look at our MCAS scores. You don't need an override. Don't vote for an override. Our scores are good." Well, he got what he wanted. We didn't get the override. The scores have declined dramatically over the last couple of years. We used to be a premier town in regards to education, and we're not. And I think all we're asking for is adequate funding for our schools. Get our kids back in schools on Wednesday afternoon with good programs. Reduce these study halls. Get the class size. We have science classes in 8th grade. I don't know if anyone here has middle school kids. We have science classes with 38 kids in the class. You gotta be kidding me. I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous. We don't take education seriously in this town. And I don't mean that personally with anyone in this room. But as a town, we're not taking it seriously. It's obvious. We were at 8th from the bottom in funding. We're at 13th now because there was an accounting change in regards to how benefits get factored in. 13th from the bottom of 400 towns, maybe 400 communities, 350 communities. I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous. You want to be a good town? We have got to put our kids in school, learning, and give them a chance to have a future. Or, if you don't, your crime is going to go up. It's going to go up. The kids, Wednesday afternoon, I would like to see the stats if the crime is going up on Wednesday afternoons. We've got to fund the education. I don't know how we do it. You can listen to each one of the department heads talk about how important each one of those line items are. We had the same issue last year with the schools, but we cut them. We have limited revenues. We've got to make the right decisions. I think it was, Greg talked about a 3% budget. I work for a pretty large company, top 100 company in the town, in Boston. Our budget's a 1%. So 3%, pretty good, I think. 1%, and we've had that the last couple of years. So it isn't just a town issue. This is a business issue. Companies that have less revenues, we have to make the tough decisions. If these aren't them, we have to make some other ones, but we cannot. We've got to fund priority 1, and I think we have to fund priority 2. We got to get these kids in the middle school back in school. Thank you very much.
heard both sides of the issue, and it's time for the board to, and I'm inviting everyone to stay, of course, to discuss on the table what it is that we can agree on doing. And we have to come to some decisions this evening. I think all board members understand that. And I think we've had ample time for input, and I think we have ample information. At this point, what I'd like to do is start with the first list that was put up, which I think is the least controversial list, and see where we stand as a result of all the discussions this evening on supporting the town administrator's recommended budget. That's okay. You could, if you want. It's a matter of... okay. It's probably going to be for a while. We're going to be looking at that set of numbers. What?
Status quo budget. You got the one before this, right?
Status quo budget.
I think you need the one before it, Marcy. Marcy. I think you need the slide before, 708. So that's the one. This one here.
I'm assuming that we're in agreement on the 708. If we're not, speak up, please.
I am not, because of the trash being, that trash is in the 708, right?
Right.
Yes, that's the problem. That's one problem I have with the
You want to
708.
speak to that?
Well, I have a problem with raising the trash fee to all paying, to an all pay type of a system. You know, when we made the changes we made, I know myself, I heard numerous from the elderly, from the low users, the fact that they're paying the same amount as a high user. And I just don't think at this point, I'm not opposed to putting that into an override question, but that's the one thing that bothers me about that 7, whatever the fee was.
It speaks somewhat to some of the items that are up here, but it actually speaks to something that I think permeates the entire proposal. My biggest concern, and again, first of all, let me just preface my remarks. I'm not going to sit here and pander to anybody as far as, you know, what I think and why I think we should do it, how we should do it. There is no doubt in my mind that the cuts the school department has made over the last several years are finally coming home to roost, and people are feeling it. We're seeing it in the lower MCAS scores. We're seeing it in the half-a-days on Wednesdays. We're seeing it in the increased enrollments and, the class sizes. We're seeing it in relation to, Mr. Driscoll pointed out, excess study halls. Oh, I forget what the terminology is now that Mr. Hodges is using, but But it's coming home to roost, and it's having a significant adverse effect on our children's education, and I believe it's going to have, if it hasn't already, because I've heard it from other people outside our community when they know that I'm involved in town government here. What's going on in your town? You were always, always known for your excellent education and school system. What's going on there? You know, and what's going on is what's going on across the town. I mean, we're not unique, and again, the pressures that our property taxpayers feel are the same as everyone else. And just the choices that we have made to this point have gotten us to where we are today. Now the question comes, you know, how much can we restore? And what's been presented in this pyramid is nothing in the way of new services. It doesn't even get you back to 100% where we were. It probably gets us back to where we should be and what we should be targeting and trying to get to. What we proposed here in the general government side is finally at the point where we're starting to look at and talk about sharing some of the burden in relation to the services that we deliver on the general government side, and saying that, you know what, as we start to put things on a scale here and we start to prioritize, education's starting to tip the scale a little bit again. Something else has to give. Getting to my comments here in relation to what we proposed, in relation to what the chairman asked as far as the first proposal. What permeates the proposals here is that we have what I consider to be a significant amount of non-recurring revenues supporting this current year's proposal that we're talking about. It doesn't look beyond next year. We're taking one-time dollars, non-recurring dollars, and you saw the commercial recently, you know, where they're inspecting the dam, and the guy takes the bubble gun and sticks it in and goes, all set, and walks away. And as soon as they turn their back, it springs the leak again. Well, that's exactly, a lot of what we're proposing here does exactly that. And it does stem the tide for the 1 year in relation to some of the proposals. If we don't make any of the suggested, not even suggested, but the proposed cuts in personnel. I have a real difficult time sitting here as a member of this board and not looking beyond next year. I think we have some significant issues that are facing this community in relation to maintaining our infrastructure, maintaining our buildings, maintaining what we have to deliver in order to maintain our facilities, our equipment, and everything else to deliver the level of services that we currently enjoy and have, and even at a minimal level. And we can't do that without financing it, without charging it, without financing it over a long period of time. The board took a great step in the last year under the guidance of the chairman's proposal in relation to this debt stabilization fund. We're already talking about, and in the first page, we're rating it already. $150,000. We're talking about rating those types of funds. And just a quick snapshot from what I've looked at, again, these might be off a little bit, but if we go all the way to the $946,000 that we're talking about as far as getting to a status quo budget, we're talking about 40% of those funds are non-recurring. Talk about the 708. I'm sorry if you don't want to hear it. You know what?
Make decisions. Let's do the chair so that we can,
Okay.
just
This
so
is
that
all
we
part
keep
of the
some order.
708. As far as the 708, 45% of the 708 is non-recurring. If you go all the way to the 946, which is really 971 because it ended up at $24,000 additional, 39% is non-recurring, 45% is recurring, and then 169,000, 167,000 is 17%, which is hopeful in relation to the lottery aid. We hope that the legislature again will sustain that at least going forward. But once again, we have 40% of what we're proposing here on a one-year basis, on a one-year budget, non-recurring funding. That's without making any cuts in services to the general government and not cutting one position. If we're going to be successful in making the general public here understand what's going on, we can't be doing it by masking it. That's my problem. The people that we're talking about here in these positions, I can put a face to those names. I don't like eliminating people's positions. I don't like laying people off. The school department did it. They've already done it. They've had to do it. It's had an impact on those families. Until the general public understands the severity of the problem, and it's not going to go away and it's not going to get better, and the legislature isn't going to fix it in 2 years or 3 years. We have to start making some of these difficult decisions in order to share the responsibility in covering the cost of education. We're not meeting the minimum criteria that we should establish, never mind the state guidelines and standards, that we should find acceptable. We're not there. So we have to restore those. We have to do that for our kids, for our property values, for what we should be doing anyway. So I think we have to start making some cuts in personnel and services on the general government side in order to send a message out to the general public. We're at the breaking point. We're already there. And again, I'm not as articulate as Diana either, but she said it very, very well. She laid it out, straight out. And we need to make these